Hey, welcome back. It's me. It's your buddy Jay Gordon here on AzureFunBytes, where we get together every week. Like I say, we get together every single week, and what do? We take take about an hour, and we have a conversation about the products, services, complementary stuff that make up the foundations of your Azure experience. Now, I'm really excited because it's Yankees opening day. I can't wait until Saturday because I get to go back to Yankee Stadium. It's been a full year. I haven't been there since 2019, and I actually have a guest on today who I know is a Yankees fan. And so that's one of the reasons we met. And we also happen to work at Microsoft, which is also cool. I'm really glad to have Greg Hurlman on today, but I really want to start by making sure that we set some context to what it is we're going to be talking about today. So you may have seen in some of the promos that I've picked today, this week, picked this week's subject is Power Apps. Now, I personally have not had a lot of time with Power Apps. I sure have done some stuff with Logic Apps, but it's a completely different product, does completely different things. And there's an entire Power platform that exists. And when I think about these platforms and the services, it's for me, I think about how we can enable people who necessarily aren't, say code-driven developers is the way I kind of put it. And what we're going to do is we're going to enable citizen developers, citizen coders, people that are going to be able to use services to replace the process of actually sitting down and writing code. And so today, my guest, Greg, he's going to help me get there and understand a little bit more. So we'll take a walk together. We'll have a conversation about all these things. But I want to set some context for you first. So I'd like you to watch this.
You're ready to take your business to the next level. Problem is, you're held back by processes that are manual and time-consuming. You can't find any off-the-shelf apps or services to solve your team's specific challenges, and you lack the developer budget to have a custom app built from scratch. Introducing Microsoft Power Apps, a powerful new way to turn business expertise into custom applications. With Power Apps, your team can quickly and easily create apps without writing a single line of code. That's right, the power to transform your business is in your hands. Power Apps has an intuitive design interface to guide you the whole way as you create apps for your team or business. Your app can integrate with data you already have or use our built-in platform. You can build apps for the web and mobile and take full advantage of your device's features. Plus, you can share apps with your team and quickly customize them as your business evolves. It's time to boost your team's productivity with a custom app that's exactly the right fit for your business. Ready to get started? Build your app today at powerapps.com or get in touch with a Microsoft partner to lend a hand.
And hey, there he is, the man with the plan,
Hey, Jay, how you doing?
the fellow Yankees fan, Greg Hurlman. How you doing, Greg?
Doing great. It's great to be talking to you during opening day. Sadly, during the game, that's all right. We can catch up with that later. And I'm glad to actually talk to you and the folks watching your show about Power Apps.
Yes, I'm super excited to hear tons about it. And I wanted to just set something up for everybody because, as usual, every week, what do? We have a poll, and we want to get some information about what people are doing and how they've done it. And so, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you all, head over. If you're not already on the Learn TV website, if you're watching on one of the other channels, I'd ask you, let's go ahead and take our poll. Head over to aka.ms/LearnTV, and I want to know, have you created a Power App yet? It's going to be interesting to find out what you've done. And I know Greg is going to help me kind of learn about it myself. So Greg, before we kind of get into that, one of the things that I'd like to ask first and foremost is, like, how did you get here? I know you work at Microsoft as well. You're a senior Power App dev advocate or something of that. Can you kind of give me some details?
Yeah, I'm actually an engineer on the Power Apps product team. I've been working for Microsoft as part of product, first with Dynamics and then Power Apps since about 2015. And about 9 months ago, I moved into a role that kind of walked a line between products and advocacy. I'm a Power Platform advocate for what we call professional developers or traditional developers. And so I talk to folks about Power Apps, whether it's the low code capabilities of it or about where you can plug in your traditional code, your APIs, your React components, whatever it is, into Power Apps to help other people make their apps even more powerful. So I am here to talk about all that stuff, really.
Awesome. And so, everyone, I want you to remember that if you want to start learning about this service as soon as we finish, I want you to head over to Microsoft Learn, aka.ms/learn. There's some great stuff. There's a module that you can actually take on Power Apps. It's going to give you tons and tons of education. There's 6 units that you can do right here. It's part of an entire Power Platform learning path where you can start getting an education on these services, but don't do it until we're finished here, because I want you to stay here and hear what Greg has to say. And so, Greg, how long have you been at Microsoft now?
So altogether, I've been at Microsoft about 7 years, and I've been a professional developer for about 20 years, building stuff with all kinds of things, mostly web, but .NET, ASP.NET, mostly JavaScripty, TypeScripty stuff these days. But I've been building Power Apps, what we call canvas-based Power Apps, or what you've normally seen in a lot of demos, for about 9 months now. And honestly, I've found it that, like, as a pro developer, I go to Power Apps first for anything I'm looking to build, just because the productivity, how quickly you can get running, is insane. As quickly it moves like your initial kind of proof of concept app from like a week or a month down to like a day or a week. It's really that big of a difference.
So let's get started with the most, I guess, the basic of questions that I have, and it's, what is Power Apps? So I'm going to read this, and then you can give me your take. Is Power Apps is a suite of apps, services, connectors, and data platform that provides a rapid application development environment to build custom apps for your business needs. And using Power Apps, you can quickly build custom business apps that connect to your business data stored in the underlying data platform, which is Dataverse. We'll talk a little bit about that. I got to learn more about that. Or in various online and on-premises data sources. So SharePoint, 365, Dynamics, and of course SQL Server. I'm sure that we can throw in Cosmos DB and our non-relational data, all these things. So let me ask you, Greg, what exactly what's your definition of a Power App, other than what I just gave the docs version?
Sure. Power Apps are a way to build apps quickly, using kind of like a drag and drop interface for the UI. And the code there is still code, but we call it low code because it's just not nearly as much code as you normally have to write in a traditional app, right? If you're writing a React app, even if you do use the CLI and you say create new app, the amount of code you start with is tons. And if you ever look at node modules, you got like a couple megs of code just to even get hello world running. For Power Apps, you need 1 line of code to get that going. It's really, a lot of that stuff is taken care of for you, and it's a more declarative way of writing that code where you just want something to show up. You don't really care about how it got there, and the language will actually help you be more performant, help you not hit the network as much, help you be a better developer without you really having to know anything about that, which is really fantastic.
So from what I know, what we can really do, that's I think the strength here, obviously, is what we can build apps from scratch. There's a great set of videos that you can take a look at, but I just want to show you like that's the big thing that I've read and understood from these, and I'll go ahead and show you. You can go ahead and take a look at all the Power Apps demos on video right here. From what I understand, we're mostly just about empowering people to build more with less. And I think that that's a huge part of the things that we're trying to do nowadays with the cloud. I mean, in general, we want to build more with less. We want everybody to kind of be able to have the ability to take part in this experience.
Yep. And it's not just that, is that we want organizations to be able to have all the apps they need built to be able to be built. If you've worked in an IT organization, if you worked in as a developer for a long enough time, you know there is never a time where there's nothing to do. There's always, you got to finish this project, and the moment you finish it, you get the weekend maybe, and then you come in and you got a brand new project on Monday. And that's because you got a big enough org, everybody needs something, right? And as time goes on, we have more apps than we have developers really at this point. And what happens is like the big important top of the pyramid apps wind up getting built by all the developers because that's got the biggest impact, the most important people want it, yada yada. But everybody across the organization needs something. And when you're talking about 6 people in HR or a group maybe over in sales that needs an app that does something specifically for them, IT just doesn't have the time, doesn't have the resources. And so what Power Apps can do is allow those people in HR or those people in sales to build their own app to take care of their own problem, letting them be more productive, letting IT be more productive because they don't have to deal with it at all. And just as you've said, like enable everybody to get more done, to be more productive, to make their work better, which is really what we all want at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely. And so I think a lot about working with people in business, say IT solutions, where they have all this extra data that may be related to customers. It may be related to general business logic. It may be related to something as simple as just dates and times about a certain things. But we may need to have this all be presentable. And so from what I understand, you can use Power Apps like glue.
Yeah.
Am I right? Like it's kind of a glue. Do you want to explain like how that glue works?
Yeah, absolutely. So Power Apps, are really the Power Platform, has the concept of data connectors, right? Out of the box, there's hundreds. I think it's close to 400, maybe more at this point. I lost count of services and data stores that we can connect to out of the box. Jay, you were talking about it earlier. Your stuff you'd expect from Microsoft, like SharePoint or SQL Server, or maybe even an Excel spreadsheet sitting on OneDrive. But it's also other stuff that's out there. There's Oracle databases, Salesforce, Zendesk, hundreds and hundreds of them. And if you have something internally that is like some API that you use for your own company, like to serve up internal customer data or preferred vendor data or something like that, you can create your own connectors to then integrate into that same system so people can start using that. And so what we've seen, is just that Power Apps is that glue where you can connect a bunch of different systems that maybe were built not necessarily to talk to each other, to get them all connected across one story. So maybe you had a sales app and you had a customer service app and you had something else for contracts or something like that.
Sure.
You can build one app to connect them all, to pull data from all three, and then allow somebody to use your app to maybe do something that spanned all 3 different services in one app, in one experience, so the users can just get something done easier, get done faster, and it can make such a difference for your users really at the end of the day.
Sure, yeah. And so here are some of the Power Platform services that we can start talking about, and we can just check them off before we go into the big ideas of Power Apps specifically. So Power BI, business intelligence, and being able to utilize our data from all these different data sources is important. And I think that one of the things that we want to avoid is a lot of the manual querying and being able to have to use, say, third-party tooling to visualize it. And so from what I understand, Greg, Power BI really helps us visualize our data. Am I right?
That's absolutely right. I mean, how many of us have had a reporting requirement on a project that we've taken care of, and that report wound up being a CSV file that we called Microsoft Excel, and we called it good. Or maybe we had something to do some out-of-the-box charts inside the app itself, but they weren't really configurable in any way. Power BI lets you just connect up your data using the same APIs, using the same data sources your app uses, and make it easy to draw, like you've seen there, like these complex visualizations that are all connected together, that can all filter and allow the business users to get at that data in the way that's useful to them. And honestly, it takes like no time at all to build these reports up, especially if you know the data. And management types, business types, the folks that are asking for those reports to begin with, love these sorts of reports because it starts to make the data make sense. You can see it instead of a sea of numbers. And Power BI just allows you to get that done super easy.
And so, of course, Power Apps allows us to kind of begin enabling how that data is used. And so it says here we can turn these ideas into organizational solutions. And so I think that one of the things that you just brought up is like people in, I suppose, like business roles as opposed to technology roles. A lot of times, and not everyone, but not a lot of them may be, very versed in SQL to be able to query data. They may not be well versed in actually writing code. Not everybody's able to just pick up JavaScript and be able to put together something that's nice and presentable for our teams. And of course, you said reports. And reporting is tremendously, tremendously vital for businesses to be able to understand what exactly is going on, how it's going on. I look at these types of tools as like the observability of data. You know what I mean? Like we talk about observability of applications a lot when we're talking about distributed applications and how our IT solutions work. But I think that observability into our data through processes that don't overwhelm us, I think is really important.
It's super important. It's seeing a chart or seeing a graph where all of a sudden the output from your machines drops off a cliff and you can actually see the line fall off the cliff, versus maybe something in the back end is watching that data. They see something fall off and they send out an email. That email gets lost and maybe people don't react, but that graph, you can't miss it.
So do Power Apps tie in well with a lot of the other Azure services that are out there aside from just data sources? Like if I wanted to throw something into, say, a cognitive service and to be able to have as part of the process, like say I'm looking into a bunch of images, like in a set of directory with just a bunch of images, would Power Apps be able to kind of go in and say, you know what, this is 99% a hot dog, or this is 0% a hot dog?
Yeah, you can do that. Power Apps actually has its own kind of AI capability with called AI Builder that lets folks that aren't data scientists, that don't know how to set up stuff inside cognitive services necessarily, to start building those data models based on object recognition in an image, or scanning forms that you see over and over and getting the text out of them. But if you did want to call out to Azure Cognitive Services, maybe to power your search inside a Power App, you could absolutely do that. Right now, it's not one of the built-in connectors, so you would have to build a custom connector to talk to Cognitive Services. But it's real straightforward to do that, and it would let you say, like, if you had a knowledge base that you were exposing your app, you could build your search off of that, and it could be better than just like a text search. It could be fuzzy, it could be intentful, and so on, and Cognitive Search could do that for you.
So it sounds like we're being really, really thoughtful about how we create and present information to our users, because we'll be able to allow them to kind of do it themselves. And I love that I'm a punk rock guy, and DIY is very important. Do it yourself, and the ability to kind of use these tools to do certain things yourself, I think is really important. So you talked a little bit about the AI Builder. We can take a look of right here how you can do form processing, and it says here your AI Builder models and your models in your flows to add intelligence to your organization. And that leads me to one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about next is Power Automate. Would you give me like a quick overview of what Power Automate does? Because I know that works alongside that AI Builder.
Sure. Yeah. Power Automate is our automation solution, our workflow solution, for whether it's automation in the cloud for background services that are just running either in response to some sort of an input. It could be on demand or because you saved a record somewhere, or you got an email somewhere, on and on, all these different triggers. And it uses all the same data connectors that Power Apps uses to connect to services and information if it needs to get stuff or save stuff. That's both for cloud flows, and then we also have Power Automate Desktop now as well, if you want to automate things on your Windows PC yourself. So maybe you have an old app that requires somebody to type something in. You don't have an API for it. Nobody has a code for it anymore. It's like 20 years old, but you still have to use it. Mm-hmm. You can use Power Automate Desktop to fill out the forms in that app, and then once that's saved, get something into the cloud automatically and continue on with a bigger kind of process if you have. So
Understood.
Power Automate does that. And if you've done anything with the Azure Logic apps, you might have noticed from looking at the screenshot you showed, Power Automate is built on top of Azure Logic apps. So if you know Azure Logic apps, you probably know Power Automate also, and just have a couple different connectors maybe that you might be connected to over here.
Yeah, absolutely. One of these days, I'm going to do a show on Logic apps. And the reason I think that they're brilliant is they're another thing of creating automation around simple processes. Like one of the things I really enjoyed building was I built a little Twitter bot right in Logic apps without actually having to do any real coding. It was mostly just point, click, next, last, and filling out some fields to actually say, all right, I want you to look over Twitter data for this particular feed, find this hashtag, and then every time this hashtag comes, I actually set it so it would send me a Teams notification. So let's say like I was looking for some trends that were going on Twitter, something specific to maybe I'm running a program or a promotion. Maybe I'm in a marketing role. Maybe I'm in a communications role, and I need to find out every single time someone's talking about a subject. We can have that automated so that we can go grab that and then say, all right, every time this happens, send something over to even a connected service. And I know like we can connect, say, storage services so that we can take information, throw it in there, throw stuff into a database like Cosmos DB. And so I really think it's really interesting that these platforms exist to kind of enable you, like I said, to do more. And so before we get into our next big part of this, and there's another service there that I want to talk about, I want to remind everybody, if you haven't taken our poll yet, please do. We're really interested if you've used Power Apps before, because it's something that, like I said, I don't know a ton about, and I just kind of understand the basics. And so Greg's going to show me some of it at some point. Don't you worry, we're not going to just be jibber jabbering the whole time. We'll take a look at it, but I want you to answer my question. Have you created a Power App yet? And like I said, of course, we've got our Microsoft Learn modules. You can head over after the show, take some time to get your hands on these services. And so I want to go back to what we were talking about. And now there's virtual agents. What are virtual agents?
So Power Virtual Agents is a way to create essentially chatbots with low to no code. So it has that drag and drop interface to start off a bot, and these bots can be either exposed like through Teams, or they can be put onto like the homepage of your internet site. So if somebody comes to your website looking for help, they get your kind of bot chat in a window. They can type in their problem, and then your virtual agent will run. Depending on the text in that problem, it'll go this branch or that branch and flow all the way through. And you can build that again without really needing to know all the code that we've had to do and previously to do this sort of thing. It makes it a lot easier to build those sorts of scenarios again without taking up a ton of IT time, IT services. And even if IT is going to be building these sorts of things, it's so much faster and so much easier to get it done, get it checked off, and get it working properly than it would be for creating everything from scratch.
And so I love this, is that how much, the ROI, return on investment, that organizations have seen using this whole platform. 502% of ROI. That's kind of unheard of. And so
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see, and like you mentioned before, linking data, the fact that there are all these ways to link different data sources into these Power Apps and Power Platform services, just it seems really awesome to me. So, Greg, let's move ahead a little bit. And I'd love to understand kind of the difference. I believe there's like Canvas and something else. Can you explain like the difference in the type of ways that you can create Power Apps?
sure. I think what you're talking about is there's basically two different kinds of Power Apps, and then there's a portal, which I'll talk about here in a second. And what you see in a lot of demos, because it is flashier, is canvas-based Power Apps, where you get exactly the UI you want, where you want it, pixel perfect, exactly how you want it to look, how you want it to act, and that's what we can look at in a little bit. Model-based Power Apps are the kind of the data first forms or over data sort of app. So the form that you
Mm-hmm.
get is you have some control over it, but the look and feel of it is already created for you. You just need to define what data you're going to expose to that app, what permissions as far as fields you're going to allow, what you're going to put on the form or not. But it lets you create an app over top of Dataverse data, or you might see a common data service data out of the box. And what model-based Power Apps really is, it came from Microsoft Dynamics. That was the new user interface that we built for Dynamics 365 when we hit
Mm-hmm.
version 9. And we've extracted that out into a layer that it's basically Dynamics without Dynamics. It's your data, your integrations, but without all the extra dynamic stuff. If you don't need all that, if you just need it for
Mm-hmm.
one particular scenario.
Awesome. And so I'll ask you that there was this term Dataverse, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to know a little bit more, like what exactly. And just like everything else, we've got documentation, and so let's keep on that spot. Can you tell me a little bit about this Microsoft Dataverse?
Yeah, so Microsoft Dataverse, or you might see it in different places still, is called the Common Data Service. We recently gave it a better name.
Mm-hmm.
Is a data store, not unlike, say, SQL Server, for people to save their data. The difference being, of course, that because it is part of the Power Platform, you don't need to know everything you need to know about data stores, about SQL, about querying, about data structure to start creating your data structures to save it. There's out of the box citizen developer or app maker level interfaces to create new tables, create new fields, create relationships between the tables through a thing we call lookup. So you don't really need to know one-to-one, one-to-many so much as we know that I'm just creating a lookup from one table to the other and so on. But the Common Data Service is a fully functional data store. It does
Yes.
have a SQL-like endpoint that if you want to talk to the Common Data Service using like select star from blah, 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 you can do that. It's got a full API, whether it's for C# or JavaScript. So you don't have to be built on the Power Platform to use that data store. It makes it a lot easier for citizen developers, but it's definitely a good data store for pro developers as well. If you want somewhere else if you want to write your data to a store that your app makers can then get to super easily.
Sure. So, can you tell me a little bit about environments?
Sure.
It appears there's several different types of environments that we can use to build our apps, and I'm curious if you can kind of give me, because we're hitting all the basics, and I want to keep on those, and then I'm going to let you kind of show me some more. But let's talk a little bit about environments for a second.
Sure. Yeah. Environments are kind of virtual dividers inside a single tenant. So your tenant is going to be like, for us, Microsoft, right? Like your whole
Mm-hmm.
organization. So you don't want to have just one environment where everybody dumps everything into. Eventually, you'd have a million apps and a million pieces of data, and it would just be a mess. So
Mm-hmm.
environments are a way for you to split that up into, maybe you have an environment for sales and one for HR and one for engineering or whatever. It provides like a level where you can define policy, define permissions, who can access this environment, who can actually create things, and so on. And it's a good divider so that you can, for example, create a default policy so that out of the box, everybody in your company that's creating Power Apps can maybe only create Power Apps based on Microsoft 365 data. So that's going to be like SharePoint or Outlook or Excel or whatever. And then in a different environment, you can create like an extended environment that allows all the connectors to an Office, but also maybe all the Azure stuff too, and so on. So you can create like a stepped governance plan for your organization, however it makes sense for you. But the environments are that configuration point and division point when you're building those policies out.
Sure. So it's almost like a standard kind of what we would do in development, no matter what, or even DevOps or something of that nature. Yeah. Is sometimes we need to kind of put up some gates, make sure that there's some that only X person is allowed to do Y in a certain environment, in a certain condition. And so I think it's important to always kind of have an understanding of those kind of controls that exist. So Greg, I've talked your ear off so far, and I want to just make sure everybody knows a couple things before I allow you to get into your wonderful demos today, because you're going to show me some really cool stuff, and I'm really looking forward to that. So if you are watching today, I'm going to bother you about it again. Please take the poll. I love it when people take the poll. It's super, super quick, easy. You get yourself logged in also to Microsoft Learn, so you can get started there. And not just that, but I want your questions. I want to be able to have Greg answer something. I've asked him so many questions so far. I'm going to eventually run out of something in here, so I'm going to need you to help me out. So this show is about you, the viewer. I really appreciate when you interact. Let us know who's here. If you're watching, say hi. We want to know who's watching today. So go ahead. Now, Greg, I am going to kind of toss it over to you. I'm going to bring up your screen, and I'd love you to kind of start talking about this particular thing where I guess you're going to build us an app.
Yeah, what I wanted to do is just kind of start from scratch to show you Power Apps, what it looks like, just so we have an idea for what we're talking about before we get into anything that's a little more integrated and fancy. What we're looking at right here is just kind of the homepage for Power Apps. It's make.powerapps.com. After you put that in, it redirects. In this case, where we are redirected into kind of my demo environment. And this allows us to create apps. There's 3 different ways to create an app. You can create an app starting from data. So maybe you already have your data inside SQL Service, inside Excel, inside SharePoint, and you can click on the arrow and you get a list of other things as well. And what we'll do is take that data, connect to it, and build you an app out of the box that has like a simple kind of list, edit, new experience to get you started. Today, though, what I'd like to do is actually create a Canvas app from blank, just so we can see what that looks like and from going from 0. So if I click on that, we need to give it a name. We'll just call this demo, because I am not creative apparently today, and click create. That'll load up, give us a circle of patience like we see so many times in so many things, and that'll get us ready. And so this is the blank app right out of the box. And before we connect to anything, let's just get a look at what coding for this sort of stuff looks like. So if I click on the plus, I'll give us the controls we can add, and I'm actually going to search for our slider. So I'm going to bring this in here, maybe make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it in 2 more times. And you can see that the guides kind of help us start laying things out and space them out properly. And got to have labels so we know what's what here. In this case, we'll shrink that down. We'll bring it down. We'll center it on here. Instead of text, we'll just say R. And center that, and maybe we'll make it bold. Good stuff. So set up. Come on. There we go.
So we're doing a little bit of amateur design here, if you will, aside from creating an application.
And what we can do, we can change this R, change this to a G, and then change this to a E, and in here. So we've got a bunch of sliders. So we'll just call this slider. If I click on here and hit F2, let's say call this Arva, or let's call it our slider.
Mm-hmm.
This guy will be G slider and G slider. Okay, so we'll get these values. There's sliders like you might know and love from every UI framework you've ever had, and we've got max and min values. We'll set that from 1 to 255, and I should have done all three, so we'll just do 1 to 255. And what I'm looking at is how we can maybe set the fill for this screen. So on the screen itself, it has a fill value, and it gives us a color picker if we want to use that, or we can use up here at the top, we can write a formula. So we can use our RGBA function that's already built in and get the R slider dot value, G slider dot value. You can see like the IntelliSense stuff popping in as I'm typing here.
Mm-hmm.
And
so it's kind of like IntelliSense when we're using like Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio, where as we start typing things, like it'll auto detect via the AI or whatever we want to call it, and start giving you autocomplete values. Am I right?
And you'll notice that it already started kind of reacting to it. We are running our app as all the time as we're dragging things in. Mm-hmm. And I can hit the triangle or hit F5 to go into preview. If I move this across, you can see that it changes those colors. All mm-hmm. that just runs right out of the box, and that's what we're looking at. Everything just kind of works. We don't need variables if we don't need them. We can just point to other controls, point to the output value here, and everything's already. You can think of it as an always hooked up, always ready, always listening event listener that's ready to go, set up for you. And then the formulas up here are a lot like Excel formulas, that if you want to take a value and then feed it into something else, you just start nesting formulas and can do it that way also. So things can be either super simple or they can get super complex as well. You can have an app that has just 10 controls and does one thing, and that's good. Or you can have an app that's got 10 different screens. It's connecting to 10 different data sources, drives the whole process through Power Automate, and at the end of the day, transforms how your Salesforce is getting things done. We actually inside Microsoft have a team that's building apps that are used by our Salesforce worldwide. Tens of thousands of people are using these apps to figure out their accounts, get the account teams, deliver things to customers, and there's some of the top used apps at Microsoft, and the engineering team building these apps is 3 people.
Wow.
3 people. It's actually a manager and 2 people. And those apps are used around the world, and it has sped up like the ability for our Salesforce to get their data right, to get it faster, service the customers faster. Power Apps can be super powerful, or it can be an app just for you to make your life easier, and everywhere in between.
Sure. So, the one thing that I can think of in these particular situations for sales forces or sales teams, whatever you want to call them, is being able to allow them to create maybe responder apps for their leads, and then that information getting stored. Maybe it wants to be a little bit more interactive than just say an Office 365 form. And so I like the idea of being able to enable people in roles that aren't traditionally developer roles to act as developers. And so I'm curious, is there some code that lies underneath this that's visible if you wanted to say export it and put it into some sort of repository?
There is. If you save your app, if I come back here and look at maybe one of my other apps that I've got created, you can take the app, click on the dots, and export the app. That'll give you a zip file, and then you can unzip that file and check it into source control. And right now in kind of we'll call it preview, because we're not there yet, and this is just Microsoft / let's see if I got the URL right. Yes. Okay. At github.com/Microsoft language Power Apps language tooling, this is eventually going to be built into our overall CLI that we have, our command line interface tool. But this tool stands alone right now and allows you to take an app, which itself, if you download the actual file, it's .ms app. Like a lot of things like this, it is actually just kind of a renamed zip file. And what this does is unzip the app and extract it out into files that are actually meant to be edited by people. So you get essentially YAML files that inside them have all the logic for these formulas, all the properties, everything else, and those can be checked into source control. They can be, you can create PRs against them, and that actually makes sense. And we actually just recently, I think a couple days ago, so I don't have the URL in front of me. Maybe we can get it for the show notes later. There is a Power App that one of our internal teams has built that actually looks at the apps and can compare two different apps that have been saved and generate a pull request based on the output from this tool. So you can see the changes between the two versions of the app right there inside another Power App. So you can then approve or reject or give feedback, yada, yada. So, I mean, this stuff can go super deep as you're going on. And on top of this, we have like GitHub Actions to compile all this stuff back together and deploy it. We have Azure DevOps pipeline stuff if you're doing your builds through there as well. Yeah, there's a whole story, and the story for what we think of as kind of the pro developer side of things when we get into this sort of application lifecycle management stuff is just growing and growing as time goes on. You're seeing that we've got our Microsoft Business Apps Summit coming up here at the beginning of May that we're going to be announcing a bunch of stuff. And then as time goes on, even into towards build at the end of May, even more. So keep your ear out, eyes out for that stuff.
So we got a question, and I'll let you kind of get back into what you wanted to show.
Sure.
Our question here is, when will we see a theme builder for Power Apps? Customizing colors, borders, fonts is very painful today, and in some cases very limited. Do you have an answer for that one?
I do. And just to give folks an idea of what we're talking about here, if you haven't seen it, up here in the corner is a theme drop down. So if I click this, we can have some out of the box themes for all the controls, fonts, colors, yada, yada, a theme. But there's no good way for you to provide a custom theme with like your company colors or the fonts you want, yada, yada, yet. This feedback is something we've heard a lot, and the Power Apps team is working actively on a solution for that right now. So you'll probably see something, I don't want to say soon, but it's not going to be forever either, where you're going to see a way to provide theming capabilities inside apps, so that app makers, when they create a new app, they can just pick, your company's theme and just not worry about having to set the font and the color and the border and the yada yada on 1,000 controls every time you're trying to create an app that looks like the other ones.
Very
I run
cool.
the same thing, creating apps for folks inside Microsoft, and it is kind of a pain, but we're working on it.
Very, very cool. And I wanted to say thank you to one of our viewers. We have someone from Portugal watching today. Leonardo, thank you so much for watching today. We really appreciate it. We've got, and yes, Genzara Razang, thank you so much. Or Ganazar, I'm sorry, I'm reading fast. Thank you so much for your question. We've got about 15 minutes left, Greg. And, the Yankees are moving along. It's the bottom of the fifth. They're still winning. I know you and I want to be able to catch what's going on after the game, or I should say more of the game after we're done here. But I know we got this 15 minutes. If you're watching, make sure you take a chance, an opportunity to ask those questions. So send your questions and comments in the chat. You can use the native one on Learn TV, or feel free to use whichever platform you're using. We've got YouTube, we've got Twitch, we've got Facebook. I want to hear from you. Send your comments, your questions, and then don't forget, if you haven't signed up, but I'm pretty sure you probably have, get your $200 in free Azure credit. You get 12 months of free services and tons of services that remain free. And then, of course, don't forget, we've got our poll. You got 15 more minutes to answer it. Have you created a Power App yet? Let me know. I want to find out. We'll get back to the poll in just a few minutes when we finish up with Greg. So, Greg, where are we going next? What do you want to show me next? Because like I said, we got about 15 minutes, and I'd love to see what's next.
So we talk about integrating. We can connect to everything in the world. We can get all this stuff working together. It's kind of abstract. There's a whole lot that folks maybe haven't seen yet. So I want to kind of walk through something that's a little more put together in a scenario that we see pretty often. Maybe not this exactly, but things like it. So we're starting off here in Microsoft Teams, where somebody has actually embedded into one of the Teams channels a Power BI report, because they're talking about this data in Teams all the time. They wanted to see the report in Teams as well. So in this case, we've got production data from maybe a manufacturing company. They were having some issues, a lot of rejects last night. In theory, they pushed out a patch to some of the machines. It looked like it was looking good. And now this morning we wake up and rejects are through the roof. Not good. So we got to take a look at it. Power BI lets you narrow things down. So if you click on the different cities, it filters through. And you're seeing over here in the corner here, this filtering also looks a little bit different. That is actually a Power App, because Power BI is great for looking at that data, but acting on that data, it just isn't there yet. So you can embed a Power App to give you a way to act on that data. I've already opened up that Power BI report here, and I can click on Edit to get into Edit View here. This app has already been set up. It has a bunch of Power BI data being passed into it. And what I'll do is click on the three dots here and click on Edit to open that up. So this Power App is going to be getting all of its data from Power BI. It doesn't need to connect to anything necessarily. Power BI is doing that work. In this case, this report is connected to a Cosmos DB database sitting inside of Azure. And so the app gets to connect to that same Cosmos DB data without the app maker really needing to do anything. So in this case, we're looking at this as a gallery, which is kind of our repeater control. We're seeing this Power BI integration data. If I highlight that, we can see it coming in, and it's that table of information straight from Power BI, all those numbers coming in. So we've got our app, and like I said, the gallery on this side kind of is our repeater to narrow down the cities. We're grouping that data by city name and outputting the rest of it as a kind of a column called machines that itself is a record of the rest of the columns that came across. So we've turned it into that basically. And then if I hold down the Alt key, I can preview. But if I want to be faster, I can hold down the Alt key and just switch and click around and be running the app instead of editing the app. And this allows me to do that. So if I click on maybe this machine here, want to look at these service orders, it opens up. We see some of the more numbers, a graph. None of the service order stuff is coming in because that actually connects to an internal information. There's preferred vendors. The company only wants to talk to certain service companies. So we actually have an API that provides that. Now we've set it all up. We're getting a bunch of errors because that connector is missing, but that's fine. So what I would normally do as a maker is reach out to IT saying, I know we have this service. We have this whole other application that we go to look up vendors. I want to bring that into my Power App. And the good news from IT is that their application is built on top of an API. And goodness knows we've been building front ends on top of APIs forever in the hope that API might be used for something else. And almost it never is. Now's our chance. So what the IT folks can do is head out over to Azure. And if I can, oh, sorry, I swear to God, I was trying to grab it from the feed in the other screen and bring it over to this monitor. Okay, so we've got Azure opened up, ready to go. I'm looking at API management. My point for looking at this is the fact that the developers for this API, the people that manage the API, the people in IT need to do nothing extra to support the Power Platform. They go out to Azure, they find their API, click on the three dots and say export. And you've got an option here to go straight to Power Apps and Power Automate. If you click on that, you pick an environment to publish to, you give it a display name and click export. Now, I don't have where my Azure stuff is not where I have access to push stuff to Power Apps right now, so I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to do is export as an open API file, a Swagger file, version 2. That just lets me download the file, and I don't even need to worry about it. I can take that file and give it to our maker friends. Downloads the file. And what we need to do on inside Power Apps is come over here and back to make.powerapps.com and come into our custom connectors. The custom connector allows you to connect to that data that maybe we don't have a connector for yet. I have a couple already created, but I'm going to create a new custom connector. I can create from blank, grab an Azure service directly, yada yada, a few different options. We can even import from GitHub. I'll just click on this to show you this real quick. This is super neat and fairly new. If I click here to open up that repository, this is choosing connectors that are out there that folks in the community have created. So I can click on custom. Certified are going to be ones that have come through Microsoft and have been approved and all that good stuff. They're going to be more official. But if somebody's created a custom one, maybe it's like a master branch and a few things that are out there already. Maybe you want to talk to Facebook. Somebody called something Instagram professional. I don't even want to know what the difference is there. You can click continue and we just get that connector ready to go, but we're not doing that today. We're going to import our open API file. And we'll call this demo again, because I can't think of anything good on my feed.
Naming things is so hard sometimes.
It is. One of those problems. So I go to my downloads, I find that Swagger file, I hit open, looks good, click continue. And it brings.
That's why we have so many IT things named after Star Trek stuff too.
It is, absolutely. So we click continue and it brings it in, but it's already pre-configured for us to go. The host is there, the base URL of the API. If I go to the security tab, we're using API security. So we're getting that subscription key. We want to put it on the header. Looks good. And then our definition is all those different APIs that are put in there. So these operational IDs, this is not super great. You wouldn't want to tell somebody this is the function you need to call for a user. So what I've done, and I've done this ahead of time, is to make these operation IDs a little better, maybe trim this down a little bit. So if you come into this wrong tab. Where's the tab? Here it is. Come into this connector. It's that same JSON file I've just ahead of time given it proper operation IDs like get factory locations or change production status. In this case, we're going to be looking at getting the vendor list and creating a machine service request for our app. So once we have it all set up, we can come over here to test it. We have our connection and we can just say, okay, we need to get our vendor list. It's just a simple get. We can test it right here. It goes out, calls the API. We can see the response coming back. Looks good. Okay. So we tell our maker the connector is created, go out, connect to it. So now back in here, I can go to our data store, which we already have one connection to Microsoft Teams. That's just out of the box. But we come in to add data. We can search for Fabricam, which is our company, and add the connector. I will point out that the little gem here says it is a premium feature. If you don't have a standalone Power Apps license, you'll need to get one for custom connectors. But I'll go ahead and add that connection. That clears out all my errors, of course. So if I click back here and come back in, we can see the little dots showing across and it calls across okay, and you get all that information. But what getting that information, that function looks just like any other code that's here. So if I drop this down, the call to actually get that is right here. We're calling our API. We're calling it get machine info by location. We're passing our location, which is required, and we're passing an instance code, which is optional. That's why it's inside these curly braces here. And that allows us to get everything that, get all that data inside the Power App. And right now we're getting all that service order information and the drop down there as well.
Very, very cool. Hey, you know what, Greg? We have a question.
Yeah, sure.
We got a couple questions, and I want to make sure that we get to them because we're running down on about 5 minutes left. And so the first question I have comes from Michael Morrissey, who asks, if you build a custom connector off an API, is it usable just like another Power Platform connector? And he wants to know if he can use OAuth tokens against the identity provider.
You can, absolutely. And just like you saw, the connector just shows up like any other connector inside the platform. But on the security side, API key is pretty straightforward. but we can do either no auth basic or OAuth 2.0. If we pick that, we can do a generic OAuth to whatever that's out there, or there's a list of things out of the box that we support, whether it's connect with Spotify, Salesforce, Google, and of course Azure Active Directory. If I click on that, we just get the fields to fill in that you would normally for OAuth with the client ID, the secret, the tenant, yada yada. Absolutely supports that. All that the OAuth claims just kind of flow right through. And then on your API side, if you want to take the OAuth token coming in and turn it around and pass it along to maybe another backend API you're talking to, then you just need to make sure that you set up inside the Azure app all those API permissions and claims and all that stuff. Power Apps will just pass it along, and it all just flows through, totally secure. And so you can delegate. Okay, you're getting the data for this user coming in, asking that. And that's something I think I haven't mentioned I should probably bring up real quick. All these connectors, they're going to get your user information. So it's going to be, you're locking down these data connections on the data source side. And then Power Apps is just asking for what this user can get, and the data source provides it. So Power Apps, people think of it as maybe not being as secure. It's just as secure as any other custom app, and probably more so, because the ability to add in like a node module that's accidentally stealing all your credentials just isn't there. It's all secure, ready to go, and yeah, definitely supports OAuth 2.0.
Very cool. So we're just about down to 3 minutes, and I got one more question for you from Jeremy. They recently added an address input to a new app and noticed it doesn't respect tab order. Is that something that's already under investigation?
That I don't know off the top of my head, but I can certainly find out. What I'll do after this is just create an app with an address input and see what it does. And if I can reproduce it and find a way around it, I can get that back to you. But otherwise, if you hit me up on Twitter at 98codes, you can ask me that question there if you're on Twitter, and I can get that information for you. But yeah, the tab order is going to be something that's you can control. It's a little bit hinky, to use a term. It can be a little fussy, but that's tab order for you. But yeah, if there's something that's wrong with it, if we're not looking at it yet, I'll make sure that I open the bug and get it looked at.
Absolutely. And always remember, user voice is out there as well, that if you need features that you want to bring to it, you can always look up user voice. And there's a lot of great people who've suggested different features to different Azure services and Microsoft applications that really are important for you to use. And so there's a community, Greg, and we're down to about our last minute or so. I just wanted to say, where can they go to get this community information?
Yeah, if you go to powerusers.microsoft.com, it'll redirect you here. And so we have a large community of folks out there, and people that are creating apps, people that have been out there for a while, our MVPs, even folks from the product team are out there trying to help you, unblock you, build these apps, answer questions, and get you successful, really, at the end of the day. The biggest part of Power Apps is that community. So many folks out there that are helping each other grow, helping each other be successful, helping each other grow their career, be better in their job, and with the Power Platform, there's so many people that are doing just that.
Very cool. Well, Greg, I think it's time for us to wave goodbye. We have our poll results. 42 say yes, 58 say no. We're going to hope we can up those numbers. But hey, Greg, thank you so much for being part of it. Find Greg at 98 codes, and Greg, have a great rest of your day.
Absolutely. You too, Jay, and go Yankees.
Go Yankees. We'll see you next time on Azure Fun Bites. Bye, everybody.